Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me, as always, is my co host, Corey Douglas. Corey, the Cowboys fell 26 to 17 to the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. It was a roller coaster, to say the least. But I think in the end, you came out of this feeling all right about the Cowboys, especially with regards to the good news we've gotten on Dak over the last few days. It sounds like we'll get Dak back this week against the Lions. So, I guess give your general thoughts on last night, and then we'll get into some more specifics.
I'm annoyed with last night. I'm typically over the last few years, I've kind of evolved into a person who I don't really let the Cowboys affect my mood one way or the other. Like if they win, I'm happy, but I'm not going overboard. One of these Super Bowl or we're going to the Super Bowl type fans. But then when they lose, I'm not mad and like because I used to be one where I would like throw a remote. Like I remember a Giants game back in 2016 where it was the T Will play, and I
Yeah.
threw my remote, turned the TV off, and threw my remote. I wouldn't watch any of the shows. I wouldn't listen to anything Cowboys related. So over the past few years, I've evolved into a person that can sit here and talk about it and kind of act like a normal human being after these losses. But last night definitely annoyed me. Just from the like, I'm not going to come in here on this podcast and say that Cooper Rush played well because he did absolutely did not. He was awful last night. But I'm not going to disrespect Cooper Rush in the work he's done these last 5 weeks or the last 4 weeks before last night. I think he did a phenomenal job, all things considered, for his situation, filling in for Dak, making sure that the Cowboys season doesn't go into the tank while Dak Prescott recovers from a thumb injury. And that is one, I think, the biggest thing that annoyed me last night. I felt like a lot of people were piling on Cooper Rush and not, they were kind of, it felt like they were waiting for this situation to happen where they could just, run around and throw a parade. And you're like, I told you Dak was better than Cooper Rush. Well, obviously, Dak is better than Cooper Rush. Like, only like a small percentage of people I felt like were saying that serious and being serious about it. Then you had some of the talk shows, taking off with that conversation, but that's what they do. That's what, the
Hmm.
Cowboys draw clicks. What's the main reason or the main contributor to drawing clicks? Oh, let's start a quarterback controversy. Jerry Jones didn't help that either. So I just felt like a lot of Cowboys fans were just waiting for this moment just to clown Cooper Rush. And, that's one thing annoying me. But then once you get to the actual game, aside from Cooper Rush playing his worst game that he's played against arguably the best team in football, the only undefeated team in football on the road in prime time, was early in the game. The decision making, starts with Cooper Rush. There was a play, I believe it was like 3rd and 2. He hands the ball off to Zeke when if he pulls it and runs to the left, he probably gets 6 or 7 yards there. So I think that kind of just started the downfall of this game. Then you have the CD Lamb play on third, and I believe it was 7 or 8 or maybe 9, where he gets the first down. The play's not reviewed, and they're already down 14-0 at this point. But because they put the Eagles in prime field position, you go down 3 possessions at that point. Then you talk about the penalties. The penalties return in this football game.
Yep.
Dante Fowler, absolutely inexcusable penalty that led
Yeah.
to directly to 7 points, the first 7 points. And then, at that point, I'm like, okay, touchdown, that's cool. First play of the next drive, Cooper Rush throws a pick, and it's just like, and at that point, I'm thinking the Cowboys are about to get rolled by 30, at that point.
Hmm.
But I thought they did a phenomenal job in the second half, responding both offensively and defensively. I felt in the third quarter, they really got things going. Uh, One thing that did annoy me and kind of reminded me of years past for this Cowboys team is this isn't the first time the Cowboys have started off slow. Now, we might not have seen quarterback play that bad in a long time, but Cowboys under Dak Prescott, they have fallen behind in a lot of games. And
Yep.
one trend that you see with those games is the Cowboys will always make it a game. But what always happens once we get into a one possession game? The defense goes out there and gives up a drive, a back killing drive that just ends the game. And that's exactly what happened last night. You get it to 20-17, and then the Eagles pretty much came down and punched you right in the mouth. and took that 26-17, and then from there, game over. Cooper Rush throws another pick. But I mean, those were just my general thoughts. It was just kind of a script that I've seen for the Cowboys, and it doesn't seem to matter how good this defense is. They're always going to give up that drive when the offense is trying to find a way to, they finally get
Yeah.
things going. And, they did a great job of keeping them in the game. But then when we needed that one stop, it just didn't happen. And that's, like I said, that's something that we've seen for years from this Cowboys team.
Yeah, it was, I mean, Cooper Rush buried them early. And again, like you said, like the Cooper Rush slander needs to stop because, it's a shame that people made Rush versus Dak a remote controversy because that, kind of divided people on Rush, and it even caused some Dak people to be like this guy stinks, get him out of there. But like Cooper Rush did his job and he did his job admirably. So first of all, hats off to Cooper Rush for keeping this season alive when many of us presumed it dead after week one. Um, but yeah, I mean, Rush's play early on buried them. I mean, it was. I believe he turned it over 3 times in the first half, if you count the turnover on downs and complete pass as well. I mean, Philly got the ball in Dallas territory 3 times. The defense wasn't nearly as bad as 26 points would indicate, and 26 points isn't even bad, um, but that they gave. I mean, Philly had 3 really short fields. They only scored 6 points in the second half, and they averaged 3.9 yards per play. Like the defense did their job. It just, Rush's play buried them early. And, we talked all this time about how part of this formula of winning with Rush was, he's going to really struggle in obvious passing situations. So you need to make sure you have the lead. So you're not playing from behind where they're expecting pass. And before you knew it, you were down 14-0, and you were playing from behind the rest of the game. And that's asking too much of Cooper Rush. And so it kind of buried them. I was very happy with how they got up off the mat, though. One thing you can say a lot about Mike McCarthy. One thing that you cannot take away from those is teams are resilient. They get up off the mat when they're hit. But yeah, they made that a game. I thought the play calling was effective. They did enough offensively outside of Rush's mistakes early on. So it's kind of hard to feel awful about this just because the defense did their part generally, and the offense, they struggled. But that Dak is coming back around the corner, so I feel okay, especially, watching, how they got up off the mat and they came back from a 20-0 deficit and made that a game. I mean, that was Philly fans were sweating. There was a little bit of a nervous energy at Lincoln Financial Field there in the early fourth quarter. And hats off to the Eagles. I mean, that was a big boy drive from the offense that they made to go down the field. I think it was like 75 yards, 70 yards, something like that. And it was almost all run. So,
Yeah, and I wanna just highlight that real quick because a lot of talk coming into this game and throughout this season, through the first now 6 weeks of the season, has been this step that Jalen Hurts has taken as a quarterback. And I'm not just completely shutting that down, but when the
I
game
would,
was on the
yeah.
line, they took it right out of his hands with the quickness. They went straight to the run game. He started using his legs. I think he wound up with like 9 carries, and a lot of that was, on that drive with the QB sneaks and different things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I felt like early in the game they were trying to come out and send a statement that he's this new and improved quarterback from with his arm, and they were throwing the ball over the field, and it didn't work. And when, like I said, when the game was on the line, they went right back to putting the ball on the ground, which is why they are still a run first team. So I think the Jalen Hurts MVP conversation, biggest step, all that
Yeah.
kind of conversation, that probably needs to stop.
Yeah, I was not that impressed with Hurts, and the throws he did make were, I mean, those were schemed open. Those were
Scheme.
a lot of them were just layups. So, not saying Hurts was bad or anything. I wasn't that impressed with him. It just was a lot of schemed open stuff. And again, 3.9 yards per play is not very good. Like the Dallas defense on a snap by snap basis did their job and held their own. They just were spotted 3 really short fields. And, we'll get into specifics here and talk about what this means for the Cowboys long term. But here's Philly's. So they had, let's see. How many drives is that? That Philly had the ball 9 times last night. They punted, and I just put this out on Twitter a little bit ago. The Eagles punted on 4 of their 6 drives that didn't start in Dallas territory, and Dallas held them to a field goal in 2 of the 3 drives that started in Cowboys territory. So, like, Philly went from their own 29, punt. Then from their own 20, they put together that 80-yard drive to go up 7-0. So hats off to them. And then Dallas 44, touchdown. Dallas 34, field goal. Dallas 46, field goal. And then punt, touchdown, punt. So, I mean, they did their job. I'm not too worried about the defense. We'll get into specifics here in a minute. But generally, you're 4-2, and you're 2 games back of the division lead, and you get another chance at Philly. So Christmas Eve is certainly going to be a really, really big game, and I can't wait for that game already. But big picture, when after week 1, if I would have told you, we're going to go 4-1 without Dak, you're going to get Dak back for the Lions game at 4-2. I think every single Cowboys fan and everybody in the building over at the Star would have gave that a resounding thumbs up. So that's just general thoughts on where we're at. Let's take a look at the offense. Up front, it just wasn't a great game up front. I mean, this was kind of the first rougher Terrence Steele game that we got. Steele gave up 4 pressures. He'd given up 4 all season, I believe, coming into tonight. Biotish was solid in the middle. Zach Martin was good once again. But the left guard continues to be an issue. Connor McGovern is just an issue at left guard. Tyler Smith gave up 4 pressures. He wasn't great at all. I mean, he wasn't. You didn't really notice him a whole lot, which is a good thing. But he definitely struggled at times. And again, Rush just kind of buried them early on, and you were in a negative game script the rest of the way. And it kind of shot their whole game plan. And again, I was really happy with how the offense responded. And I thought this was Zeke's best game in a really long time. I thought Zeke was really effective, but generally, I just wasn't. I mean, the early mistakes just buried them, and so and you can't do that against a good team like the Eagles.
Yeah, I guess the grades are probably telling a different story, but I really didn't think the offensive line was horrible per se. Like I felt like they were doing enough, and especially in the situations that they were put in where it was going to be predominantly pass, and like you said, they were able to do a good job in the run game. So overall, against that defensive line, I'll take that type of performance. It's just a matter of, in key spots, they did get pressure on Cooper Rush, which the CeeDee Lamb throw. I mean, I saw people going both ways on the pick. I believe it was the last pick he threw where CeeDee Lamb had beat the corner. He was wide open. Brandon Graham came in, hit Cooper Rush. Some people have said that he should still be able to make that throw. Some people have said, well, that's kind of why he wasn't able to make that throw. And me personally, I don't really feel like that was like a noodle arm situation. I just felt like he just didn't make a good throw on that, like he did the majority of the night. Like he didn't make good throws, and the decision making along with that wasn't good. But overall, the offensive line, like I said, I didn't think it was the reason you lost. The reason you lost is because the quarterback's decisions.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just buried them early on, and it was like the worst case scenario that we mapped out before. It was like, all right, you can't turn the ball over, and you gotta at least be in the game or ahead to stay in a decent game script for Rush, and that was shot to hell immediately. So, but
and they
yeah,
blitzed us in the second quarter like they've been doing teams all year.
Yeah, and some of that was a little skewed because Philly was on like the 6-yard line at the end of the first
The
quarter.
Dante Fowler situation,
But I
a
mean,
lot of those stats are skewed that way, but
yeah,
it makes for a good narrative.
absolutely. But yeah, Rush was just, I mean, 4.8 yards per attempt. Offensively, they were 4 of 10 on third down. 21 first downs is actually double what they had last week against the Rams. They ran for 134 yards for 5.2 yards per rush. The 10 penalties killed them. It was penalties and turnovers. That's what killed them. And I also thought you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it earlier, but I think it was the first drive of the game or maybe the second drive when Dallas had it and it was still 0-0. And I think they got a gain of 15 to Ferguson or Hendershot, and the CeeDee Lamb block in the back just took a lot of wind out of their sails.
Yeah, they
They were
punted right
moving the
after that.
ball. They were moving the ball. I want to say they were at midfield when that play happened. But yeah, generally the receivers, I mean, it was a very limited game plan. I mean, they ran bootlegs all night long to tight ends, and it worked to their credit in the second half.
And what a
CeeDee
move
Lamb,
by Jake Ferguson on the
yeah.
touchdown.
Ferguson and Hendershot combined for 6 catches for 62 yards. Ferguson had a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb had 5 catches for 68 yards. Gallup had 2 for 18. Noah Brown had 1 for 10, and he almost had the catch of the year in the end zone. McEwen also had 1 catch for 10 yards. I believe that was also on one of those bootleg rollouts where Rush dumps it off to a tight end. But
Michael
generally,
Gallup is not looking good right now.
yeah,
He doesn't look healthy.
he's going to take some time. I mean, it's going to be until probably Halloween before he looks right again, and probably not until the Green Bay game when he looks fully right. You know, we've seen flashes from him, but I mean, at the very least, the threat of Michael Gallup on the field opens up this offense more. So he needs to be out there. He needs to be working his way back to 100%. But I just thought the offensive line didn't protect Rush very well, and I thought that Rush's mistakes just really hurt them early. Let me take a look at how many pressures the Philly defensive front generated, because it seemed like a lot. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, they generated 16 pressures, which isn't anything outrageous, but it felt like more. It felt like Rush was under fire a lot of the night, and that contributed to some of his mistakes, namely the third interception where Lamb was running wide open. And if Rush had a half a second longer to throw the ball, I mean, that's Lamb's walking in for 6. So overall, turnovers killed him, but I mean, other facets of the offense, you can envision how it's going to look when Dak gets back. And I think generally these 5 weeks have been a really big positive for the Dallas offense in terms of figuring themselves out. And now it's gonna be another adjustment when Dak comes back, and they got to get used to that and get the timing right there. And that's thankfully you have 2 easier opponents coming up. But generally, I thought the offense just struggled, and this was the game where you really saw all of Rush's limitations magnified on a really big stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple. I mean, simply put, just like that. I mean, you're on prime time against the best team in football, and some of the mistakes that kind of have been either negated because of penalties on the other team, like in Washington, or where he's not having to do much in Los Angeles because the defense is, playing really well, and you start off the game up 9-0. You're playing from behind, and that's kind of what I was mentioning one of the last 2 weeks where. I was saying that, what's the ceiling with this Cowboys offense with Dak Prescott? Well, it's that type of game that you need your starting quarterback in, because the defense gives up 26 points, although a lot of it is because quarterback mistakes. But you have a quarterback, we've seen Dak Prescott bring this team back and, go kind of head to head or toe to toe with some of these elite offenses. And Cooper Rush just doesn't have that ability. It obviously hurts. And then you compound that with penalties and mistakes and turnovers. You bottle all of that up, and you get what you got last night, which is, it's only a 9-point loss at the end of the day, because I think Cooper Rush really settled down in the second half for the most part. I mean, there's still some throws here and there that he missed, but quarterbacks are going to miss throws sometimes. And, that's kind of, but when you start off in the 20-point hole, I mean, you're not going to overcome that very much unless you're Patrick Mahomes, who does that, pretty frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, and I mentioned earlier, the biggest bright spot was the young tight ends, and it appears we have a player in Jake Ferguson. I mean, Hendershot's shown some flashes. Sean McEwen had a catch, but Ferguson's really showing some flashes, and honestly, he kind of reminds me of Dalton Schultz when Dalton Schultz was first coming up. He showed a little bit of yards after the catch ability with that touchdown. He seems to have really sure hands, and he seems to be a pretty solid blocker. I mean, there's lots to like with Jake Ferguson, and it checks out with the grades. He was Dallas's among players that played substantial snaps. The highest graded player was Sean McEwen, but he only played 9 snaps. The highest graded player that played substantial snaps for the Cowboys was Jake Ferguson. Zeke Elliott was second, and then right behind him was Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyler Smith. So it was Terrence Steele received an awesome grade of 82.8 on run blocking. So Terrence Steele gave up some pressures, but man, they were moving bodies in the run game. The Dallas run game was very effective, and that was very good to see. The problem was, those touchdown drives to cut into the lead were great, but when you're doing it primarily on play action and running the ball, those drives take forever. And let me pull up the box score. I believe let's see how long those drives took, because they went okay. Touchdown, 9 plays, 79 yards, 428, and so that one was pretty effective. But the second touchdown drive was 15 plays, 93 yards in 7 minutes. And so when you don't have Dak, your abilities to get it, your ability to get explosive plays is really limited. And you just when you're down and you're trying to run the ball, the clock's not your friend. So that was a great drive, but it ate up a ton of time. And I believe Dallas only touched the ball 3 times in the second half. So it is what it is. It's how it played out. But I think generally the offense wasn't good without Dak. Don't get this twisted. Like, it's not what I'm trying to say. But I think individually, I think players developed and got better. And, individually, they look leaps and bounds better than they look week one. Be it the young tight end stepping up, Tyler Smith getting better, Terrence Steele being solid. The offensive line starting to come together. The receivers look a lot better now than they did in week one. So, I think generally overview of these 5 weeks without Dak, I think they're obviously a positive in the record standpoint, but I think offensively, this unit's going to be a lot better than it showed in week one with Dak.
Yeah, and a lot of that is going to have to do with the opponents that they're going to be facing too. I mean, you're not going to be going against Tampa Bay's defense. Especially these next 2 weeks. You're going against probably the worst defense in the league by a lot of measures in the Detroit Lions this upcoming Sunday, which is going to be a fill it out game. What I'm looking forward to, and not to get ahead to the Lions game, but the Lions have shown the ability to score some points. So I think this isn't, I wouldn't say the perfect bounce back game, because you might have to score 30 in this game. Who knows? But like I said, getting Dak back is just going to hopefully open up a lot of things. And hopefully he comes back in, the form that he was in the first half of the 2021 season, and not the Dak Prescott that's been here, this back half of last year in the, through one game, obviously against Tampa Bay this year. But, it's going to take some time. I think there's going to be some rust there. And I think there's going to have to be a level of patience that we all have with Dak coming back.
Yeah.
But the fact that, he gets the 2 games against the Lions and Bears, who aren't good teams per se, are going to be pretty good, hopefully.
Yeah, and it is the NFL. Every game is difficult to a degree. Obviously, some more than others, but they say any given Sunday, and stuff happens in the NFL. I mean, the Jets went into Lambeau and beat the brakes off the Packers yesterday. Stuff happens. So, obviously not taking the Lions and the Bears lightly, but Dallas will be substantially favored in both games. Both games are at home. In terms of Dak coming back, and I know we're getting ahead, and we'll get back to the Eagles game here in a minute, but I just want to say this. In terms of getting Dak back, these 2 games are probably the ideal ones to sort of ease him back, because it almost shakes out perfectly. You get Lions at home, Bears at home, and then the bye week, and then you have a measuring stick game in Lambeau Field. That's a really important 3-week window to get Dak back up to speed, because like you said, there's probably going to be some rust, and it's going to be really annoying when he makes one overthrow and Cowboys Twitter freaks out and bring back Cooper Rush, because there's going to be a segment of Twitter that says that for sure. But this is going to be a really important 3 weeks of getting Dak right, shaking the rust off. And, maybe he could have played this week. It seems like that really would have been pushing it, but, apparently his throwing workout went well. And, you almost want to be able to ease him back in. Like, as much as I wanted him to play, throwing him right into the fire against a 5-0 Philly team on prime time, like when, he hasn't had much time to get up to speed. That seemed like a lot to ask. And so, in hindsight, I'm kind of glad that they held him one more week. And, it's not for sure he's going to play. They still said they'd like to see him get a full week of work, but he was saying yesterday after the game that his game plan is to play against the Lions. So I think, looking at this Philly game, I think the run game figured out some things. And, again, these 5 weeks in general, I think they figured out some stuff in the ground game. And that's only going to get better because teams aren't going to be able to just stack the box and, because they're not scared of Cooper Rush attacking them downfield. So I'm really excited to see how different the offense looks. And just generally yesterday, like we said, turnovers buried them. Let's take a look at the defense. Just looking at Philly's numbers, like I mentioned earlier, 3.9 yards per play. I thought they did a pretty good job there. Philly's overall yardage numbers aren't great, 268 yards, but part of that's because they had 3 really short fields. Philly was 6 of 14 on third down. They were 1 of 1 on fourth down, 155 passing yards, and where's the rushing? 136 rushing yards. I mean, man, 3.9 yards per play, 3.5 yards per rush. Like, the defense did their job. Philly had some nice schemed up plays, but I think generally I was happy with the defense, despite Philly fans, acting like, oh, we hung 26. So if you take a little deeper look at the numbers and where these possessions started, the Cowboys defense did their job. And, granted, they weren't as dominant as they had been in weeks, but I would still sign up for 3.9 yards per play every week and then some.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Philly's offense, I think you find an offense that's kind of hard to game plan for, because they do a lot of that RPO, and like I said, they had some stuff schemed up that got Micah Parsons in some compromising positions. And then I've just been reading some of the timeline today where some people that already have access to the all 22 film have went back and said, hey, that's not Micah Parsons' fault. There were some miscommunications. And at the end of the day, the general census is that the Eagles just schemed some stuff up and the Cowboys weren't quite ready for it. But I think during the middle and especially early in the second half, Dan Quinn, he turned the heat up and the defense started really, making an impact and getting the Eagles off the field quickly. But like I say, it's hard not to be disappointed from, at least for me, with that last possession that just iced the game.
Yeah.
It's just like, get off the field in that situation. Like I said, we've seen this so many times previous, but overall, I'm not mad at the defense. I would have just liked to seen that stop and see what would have happened on offense on that possession with the Cowboys down. Maybe you give up a field goal or, something like that, keep it 23-17. I would have liked to see the Cowboys offense in that situation. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And but overall, like the numbers, like you said, they checked out. The defense is still good, and I think a lot of what you saw from the defense, as far as like a frustration standpoint, is just the level of expectation this team has. I mean, you have Trevon Diggs taking off his helmet and slamming it into the ground in the end zone after that last touchdown, and that just goes to show like this team expects a different level. They expect to get that stop in that situation. I know Michael Parsons was talking after the game that he felt like they let the offense down when they needed them to pick them up, which is just, I like that level of awareness and accountability from this defense. But like I said, I just would have liked to see that last stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just went back and looked at yards per play in each game. This was by far their best output in yards per play, which, that's snap my stat basis. Again, highest point total, but again, that was due to 3 really short fields. And on 2 of those 3 short fields, they held them to a field goal and they got off the field. And honestly, on the first one, they held them to a field goal, but Dante Fowler with that inexcusable penalty was, that was a 4-point penalty. So, but yeah, looking at the yards per play of each game, Tampa Bay 5.6, Cincinnati 5.7, Giants 5, Washington 4.9, and then the Rams 5, and then the Eagles 3.9. So, I mean, and we viewed 4.9 against Washington, 5 against the Rams as absolutely dominant. And so, again, it wasn't as game wrecking as we were used to, but snap by snap basis, they did their job. I thought the secondary was fine last night. Micah Parsons was Dallas's highest graded defender. Again, I don't think this was their best performance. Don't get me wrong. This was not, a super strong performance by the Dallas defense. They struggled with some of the schemes, some miscommunications, like you said. I thought, Donovan Wilson wasn't great. And then, looking at the grades, there was just miscommunications across the board. Micah Parsons registered 3 pressures, and he led the team in pressures. Granted, it's going to be harder to get pressure on Jalen Hurts whenever they're running the ball a lot, and when they throw, they're getting the ball out quick. So, and I thought they made some plays when they needed to. But yeah, it was definitely a quieter game. You probably needed the defense to get you a takeaway or two to win this game, and they didn't. Granted, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of opportunities to do so, but that's just kind of how things shook out last night. I thought Van Der Esch had a really strong game. He stuck out to me. Malik Hooker was again really good. He was making plays all night. So I'm happy with the defense, and I'm not falling for the narratives that are going to be out there about the defense after this week, because frankly, they played very well. It just wasn't up to the dominant standards that we got used to.
Yeah, I mean, they got 4 sacks last night, which, like you said, it's hard to get pressure on a quarterback like Hurts, because at any given point, he can just pull the ball down and run with it, and turn what could have been a sack into a 1 or 2 yard gain. So they were able to get home, in certain situations. And like you said, the only thing that was one of the things that was missing was just the takeaway. They needed one. This was the game where they needed, instead of losing the turnover battle 3-1, maybe you only lose it 3-1 because you get a takeaway yourself. Maybe, it changes the outcome of the game, where you take, maybe 6 or 3 points off the board, and then you have a whole different dynamic of what's going to happen. But as far as like standouts, like Michael Parsons, like I said, he got caught in a bunch of compromising positions last night, but then he did start to take over the game, like towards the middle. We were like, oh, Michael Parsons is here, and he is.
It was when Lane Johnson went down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought up Lane Johnson, because that's another thing that annoyed me last night. I heard, I guess a Philly radio host or something say, it was actually on ESPN this morning. They said that this was a beatdown, and the only reason it didn't wind up a beatdown is because Lane Johnson went out of the game. And I'm like, do you not see the Cowboys without their starting quarterback? Maybe that's why it was a beatdown. It's just like that. It's just one of those several things that just annoyed me about this football game. And then it being the Eagles, it's just so annoying. Sirianni, the head coach, is just he's a try-hard, corny dude. Jalen Hurts' little shrug that he does after he throws little schemed up touchdown passes annoyed me. AJ Brown talking nonsense. It's just the whole the Eagles, man, and that fly Eagles fly. Oh, and Jason Garrett. Wow, what a sellout he is. What is that fly Eagles fly nonsense that he was spewing on national TV like that? He did not have to go that far. So, like I said, last night really annoyed me. But like I said, 4-2, still in the playoff position. Third place in the division, oddly enough, because the Giants just won't lose these days, it seems like. But yeah, man, overall, I'm not too upset, just annoyed with some of the things and how they played out last night. Oh, and I also thought Kevontae Turpin, I thought he was pretty good last night. Kelvin Joseph was terrible. He had 2 or 3 flags on him, although the holding one, kind of ticky-tack there. But yeah, those were just some other thoughts I had that were in my mind, because you brought up Lane Johnson. TV just annoyed me this morning.
Let's have the Sirianni conversation here in a minute, because I have some thoughts on that as well. But like you mentioned, pressure wise, they generated 16 pressures, 2 sacks, 1 hit, 13 hurries. Parsons had 3 pressures. Dorrance had 3 pressures. DeMarcus Lawrence had 3. Odigizua had 2. Dante Fowler had 2. Sam Williams had 1. Anthony
Barr also had a body slam.
Yeah, and the body slam. Tristan Hill had 1. And then, just generally looking at the coverage numbers real quick, I'll just run down the board on those. Parsons played a lot more linebacker this game. He had 10 coverage snaps. He allowed, 2 targets, 1 reception for 21 yards. And then Malik Hooker gave up 1 catch for 11 yards. Anthony Brown targeted 4 times, 3 catches, 43 yards. Trevon Diggs just gave up 1 catch for 11 yards. Nice bounce back day for him. I thought he was really good. And then Jordan Lewis gave up 5 catches for 29 yards. There wasn't a lot through the air for Philly. And again, I just was not that impressed with the Phillies offense. I mean, they on a snap by snap basis, Dallas did their job. And, I just think that they struggled with some of these schemes where they were going right at Parsons. They're putting him in a bind. There was miscommunications with some of the motions and mesh concepts. I mean, that they got burned on the same thing to AJ Brown twice, once for a touchdown and then one for a big gain. I think a third or fourth down near midfield. So, um, I do like Philly's offensive scheme a lot, but I keep harping on it. The defense did their job, and there's a lot to feel really good about because you have an absolutely elite defense. I think we know that now through 6 weeks. And, you have an offense that's really struggled, but you have a top 10 quarterback coming back next week, and he's going to have 2 or 3 weeks to get things right before we get into the second half of the season. And, hopefully you head into the bye 6-2 and you take care of business and you beat 2 bad teams that you should beat. So, I'm not too, I mean, it's the NFL stuff. And so I think worst case, you're 5-3 heading into the bye, which again, we absolutely all would have taken that. And by the way, quick note from John Machota, Mike McCarthy just said the Cowboys expect Dak Prescott to be cleared today or tomorrow by the medical staff, and he will return to practice Wednesday. So Dak will be returning this week. All signs are pointing to that, and I think Vegas also thinks so. I think the opening line was Dallas was favored by a touchdown on Sunday against Detroit. So, but yeah, I did want to. So we kind of talked about the game, X's and O's, offense, defense. I want to have a Nick Sirianni conversation because, I mean, his little yelling bit on the sideline with the that's effing game, F you. He's yelling across the sideline. It gave me it was just so cringy, and it gave the hold me back bro vibe where, it was a fake tough guy attitude that just was lame. It was so lame. And, he spent all week, that video of him holding up his Beat Dallas shirt that he wore last year. He's like, this was stupid of me to do this last year. This game's not about the rivalry. And then he's going off the field yelling, how about them Eagles? I mean, can you imagine if we beat Gardner Minshew at home and Mike McCarthy went off the field yelling "Fly Cowboys, fly"? I saw someone say that on Twitter. I was like, no, like you wouldn't do that. It just last night, and the way Eagles fans have been acting on social media, it gave big time little brother vibes. It gave big time fake tough guy vibes. And I think a friend of the pod, Dan Rupert said that he felt that this was like, he's like, he grew up in Philly and he's like, I knew guys like this all the time, where it's kind of the fake tough guy attitude. And I just thought, I mean, I hadn't really thought much about Sirianni before last night, but the more I think about it, I mean, that man is corny as hell. And like,
He's completely unlikable.
This is like what we're getting in a little bit of fandom weeds because we're trying to break down the games, everything that's going on, but just like I'm letting it come out a little bit. He was corny as hell and really unlikable. I mean, the fake tough, like nothing rubs me the wrong way quite like a fake tough guy. And that was just his act on the sideline. Like it just.
And let's go back to the Dante Fowler play. He's sitting there high stepping down the sideline once he jumps off sides. Like even that, like I understand, like you're a coach, you're going to be involved in the game.
Yeah.
Your players appreciate that, but dude, get a grip, please. Like this is week 6 in the NFL. There's still a long way to go. I know you guys are 6-0. Like enjoy it. Cool, you guys won, but let's act like we've done this before and act like you guys were a playoff team last year and act like your biggest aspirations of the season are not to beat the Cowboys. Like let's pretend like that. You don't see Cowboys, this is a serious rivalry. Cowboys Eagles is for real. Like fans don't like each other, the players don't like each other. But come on, like, let's tone it down a little bit. It's week 6. We've kicked her ass for like the last 3 years. So let's please like remember that.
Yeah, like I mean, the last 2 Cowboys quarterbacks they've beaten are Ben DiNucci and Cooper Rush. You haven't beaten Dak since 2019. Like, just tap the brakes a little. I know you're excited. You're 6-0. I'd be excited too. Like, I would love it if the Cowboys were 6-0, but it just felt like there was some big time little brother syndrome going on, and treating that like that was their Super Bowl. I mean, Sirianni, man, fake tough guy. It's official, and I gotta say, I already am counting down the days till Christmas Eve because
I was just about to say
I think, one, I think that game could very easily have the division on the line if, assuming the Eagles drop a game or two along the way and the Cowboys take care of their business as well, and Dak stays healthy. But just December 24th is going to hit differently, and I'm really excited for that. Not to get too far ahead, but last night, and granted, this is the first time in a really long time both the Cowboys and Eagles have been really good at the same time. So, it's fun. I love the rivalry, but God, that was corny last night. It was very unprofessional little brother activity going on that Philly sideline. So, December 24th will be a lot of fun, but that's a long ways away. Cowboys got some business to take care of between now and then. They got, like we said, the Lions and the Bears, and then a bye week, and then they'll head to Lambeau, which, by the way, I will be attending that game in Lambeau Field. I'm heading up with my buddy who's a Packers fan, so that should be fun. I'm excited to check the Lambeau box. I'm glad Dak's healthy. I hope he stays healthy for that game, because that'd be a really big bummer if I go all the way out there to watch Cooper Rush. So, this is a big month for Dallas, and especially these 3 weeks leading up to Green Bay. It's going to be all about getting Dak up to speed, getting the timing right with the offense, because there's definitely a chemistry thing. Gallup's working back. Dalton Schultz, who we didn't mention, missed last night. Apparently he tweaked his knee again, in the pregame walkthrough. So, they need to get him healthy. It's just the offense is getting healthier, and, the way the defense has been playing, it's definitely exciting. So, you got anything else before we get out of here, Corey?
No, that was it. Just unfortunate loss, but hey, 4-2, still in the playoff position. All things considered, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you guys for listening. As always, we'll be back later this week to preview Cowboys versus Lions. I believe they kick off at noon on Sunday. So make sure to check out everything we're doing at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. We have Stars content, Rangers content, Mavs content, with the Mavs kicking off this week. Check out our Cowboys Twitter at Cowboys News 365. Check out our main account at Dallas_Fanatic. Check out our Instagram at DAL Cowboys Fanatic. You can get me on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. And you can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas. And again, be on the lookout for articles all week. I'll have my offensive and defensive reviews up this week as well. Just with time and everything, those are the only 2 articles I can do each week. So I just go back and I review the offense, review the defense, and throw it together for you guys. So again, thank you guys for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube as well. Any subscribers help. So again, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Silver and Blue Podcast.